On June 16, 2003, at 1830 hours, during a heavy rainstorm, a fire department was dispatched to a high water emergency. A 30-year-old volunteer firefighter responded to the fire station in his privately owned vehicle, or POV, to pick up a fire apparatus. He was heading east on a 2-lane paved road when, according to the state police report, he drove over a large pool of water, causing him to hydroplane and lose control of his POV. He traveled off the westbound shoulder of the road and struck a billboard signpost. A civilian motorist came upon the crash scene and called 911. At approximately 1832 hours, the volunteer fire department was dispatched to this motor vehicle crash. Within about 6 minutes, the victim was extricated, given advanced life support, and transported via ambulance to a regional trauma center approximately 30 miles away. He was pronounced dead at the hospital at 1940 hours. According to annual firefighter fatality reports by the U.S. Fire Administration, an average of 25% of emergency responders who died in motor vehicle crashes are killed in POVs, or privately owned vehicles. This is unacceptable. We can do better, and we have. A recent USFA report showed that for the second year in a row, no firefighters were killed in crashes while responding to incidents in a POV. We've learned that the most significant risk associated with personnel using their personal vehicles is that they may operate them as if they are emergency vehicles. All too often, this leads to crashes. While motor vehicle laws vary from state to state, all states address this issue similarly. Personal vehicles are not emergency vehicles and are not permitted the same exemptions to motor vehicle laws. For example, authorized emergency vehicles may be allowed to exceed the posted speed limit, move against the normal flow of traffic, and proceed through a negative intersection control device. But most states require volunteers driving personal vehicles to obey the state motor vehicle code. To prevent injuries and death from POV crashes, NIOSH recommends that ESOs have SOPs that explicitly make the use of seatbelts mandatory in POVs. Have SOPs that outline appropriate use of POVs for emergency response. Enforce all of the organization's policies and procedures. The enforcement is the tough part. Remember, this could be a matter of life and death. Each individual responder must understand the need for personal accountability. This training presentation is about you, your personal vehicle, or POV, and how you use it when you answer an emergency call. We're losing way too many good firefighters and EMTs in motor vehicle crashes. It's a nationwide problem. That's why we want to show you how to keep safe on your way to and from an incident. The first thing you need to know is if your POV is an authorized emergency vehicle. Take a look at these pictures. Which one of these is an emergency vehicle? How about these two? Definitely the one on the right, but what about the one on the left? And these two? The one on the right is certainly an authorized emergency vehicle, but the one on the left may or may not be. In all three examples, you can't know for sure if the POV with a warning light is an authorized emergency vehicle unless you know what state that vehicle is licensed in. Surprised? Was your first instinct to say yes to all the personal vehicles that had warning lights? That's where a lot of folks get it wrong. And in getting it wrong, they could be setting themselves up for some serious consequences. The problem is, once a firefighter or an EMT installs a warning light or an audio warning signal in their personal vehicle, they think the normal rules of the road don't apply to them. They flip on their warning light, put the pedal to the metal, and drive with the attitude, "Make way, people. Very important person needed at an emergency. Coming through." Whoa, whoa, whoa. First of all, whether you're behind the wheel of an authorized emergency vehicle or not, you cannot drive recklessly and endanger other people. However, there are differences in what you can and can't do on your way to an incident based on whether your personal vehicle is considered an emergency vehicle, and it differs from state to state.
Emergency response is generally covered by each state's motor vehicle code. And within that code, it talks about the appropriateness, how you're supposed to respond, what lighting is appropriate, what's emergency vehicles, what are POV response vehicles. So it's important for every person to really know and follow the rules and regulations of their state or their emergency department.
You have to check your own state's motor vehicle laws about the use of personal vehicles during an emergency. In those states where agencies are allowed to issue permits to their members for installing both audible and visual warning devices, their POVs may be considered actual emergency vehicles. This status, by the way, applies only for the time it takes to get from your starting point to the incident. Here's the thing. If your POV is not an emergency vehicle and you choose to ignore the law or you allow adrenaline to guide your driving decisions, you could risk a ticket or fines. Or worse, you could seriously injure or kill someone. If that happens, you would face very serious charges. And claiming that you are a firefighter or an EMT on a call likely isn't going to protect you.
If you respond to an emergency scene and you exceed the speed limit, you break any of your motor vehicle code sections, you are subject to the same sanctions as anybody else. You can receive fines, you can get points, you can be arrested depending on the offense. And if you are responding and you get involved in a crash, you could be held criminally and civilly liable for your actions. So it's very important for you to realize that when you are responding, you have to do so in a safe manner and something consistent with the laws of your state.
Now, before you settle back in your seat, fold your arms and think, our local cops won't ticket us, I'm safe. Think again. Yeah, maybe you could avoid a ticket, but if you get into an accident and someone winds up hurt or dead, you'll earn a quick trip to the courthouse to tell your story to the judge.
Well, I've been involved in emergency services my entire life. I've been involved over 40 years. We represent public safety organizations around the United States. And I can tell you that the number one cause of liability and harm suffered by people is vehicle crashes. Vehicle crashes in emergency vehicles and POVs. So far too many people die as a result of those kinds of crashes. Whether you're operating a personal vehicle or a fire company designated emergency response vehicle, the principles are the same. In both cases, you have to drive with due care for the safety of others. And when we think about responding in a POV with the word liability tucked away in our head back there, I think it helps us to realize, I can be responsible for injury, harm to others if I drive in a reckless and erratic manner or unsafe speed. And what I tell emergency responders is this: if you're about to do something that you're not sure about, just think for a second, take a moment, look around, so to speak, and say, hey, am I doing something that everybody else would be doing in this situation? Would other firefighters and EMS personnel be doing what I'm about to do? And if the answer is no, then you might be acting unreasonably.
Let's review some numbers to show you what kind of serious consequences we're talking about when you drive your POV unsafely. Since most volunteer departments don't require personnel for off-duty shifts, members are allowed to respond directly to incidents from their homes or work, which means they're most likely driving their POV. Of firefighters and EMTs killed en route to an incident, 85% are volunteers. Over a 10-year period, the USFA recorded an average of 1,017 injuries per year associated with POV collisions, and these are just those that were reported. We aren't only hurting ourselves, we're hurting those that we have sworn to protect. Let's look at some of the reasons for POV-related crashes and fatalities. Driver error, high speed, lack of seatbelt use, rollovers, intersections, alcohol and drugs, including over-the-counter medication. And let's not forget the most common cause of all motor vehicle collisions today, distracted driving. When you respond to a working fire or a CPR in progress, it is natural to get hyped up, and oftentimes our judgment gets foggy. This is distracted driving. So is using a smartphone to update or check the status of other members responding, or to notify a loved one that you're going to miss dinner. Trust us, it can wait. The most important thing to focus on, the task at hand, driving. Arriving safely is the most basic and fundamental element to saving lives. If you don't arrive safely, you cannot contribute to helping others in need. All right, we've made the point. You plus your POV plus unsafe driving could add up to disaster. That's the personal cost. Now, let's look at the financial cost. If you're in your POV and you're injured on the way to a call, you may be covered by some form of insurance, such as workers' compensation insurance. Now, how's that going to impact your family if you have to live on a reduced income? Workers' compensation or disability insurance may only compensate you for a portion of your regular wages. Here are more sobering things to consider. If you're a volunteer, will your full-time employer be able to hold your position open for you while you recover? Will your injuries prevent you from ever returning to your current job? Can you do without your vehicle while it's being repaired? Can you live without your driver's license for 30 days, 90 days, a year? Can you afford to pay for your traffic citation? Then, there's the money you'll need for your legal defense. Your auto insurance may cover the costs of any physical damage you caused, and it may even cover your defense costs in a civil case if you're sued. But if you have to go to court for a traffic violation or face criminal charges, you'll be on your own, because insurance does not typically cover those costs. And if you die in a crash while responding, your family may get benefits from the Hometown Heroes Act through the Public Safety Officer's benefit. However, some states require an autopsy following a line of duty death. And if that autopsy finds any alcohol or illegal drugs, your survivors will receive nothing. Make sure that if you respond, you are sober and able to make critical decisions required when driving. This includes the use of over-the-counter medications. Plus, your accident wouldn't affect just your wallet. If the evidence shows you were responsible, your organization could be hit with higher insurance premiums. Then there's the negative exposure your station could face when the news got out. It's a lose-lose situation. Driving your POV in an unsafe manner to an incident can have devastating personal and financial consequences. So what can you do? First, talk to your chief or administrator about setting up a duty crew schedule. The duty crew would staff a station or an emergency vehicle for a set number of hours on a given day. That crew should be the first to respond to an emergency scene and determine at that point if additional support or resources are necessary. This would reduce the need to have large numbers of volunteers responding to every call. We're all very busy with life's endless list of activities. Members responding in POVs have decisions to make when that pager goes off. One thing that's often forgotten but must be part of that consideration is your distance from the scene or the station. Are you within a reasonable distance to make a difference? If you have to cross one or multiple ESO districts to get to your destination, you are too far away. You may put other responders, yourself, and the public at risk for nothing. Make sure you're within a reasonable distance to make a difference. If you're an officer or administrator, there are things you can do to help reduce your organization's exposure from members driving their POVs to an incident. Consider not allowing POVs to be used in an emergency response mode. Many organizations are choosing not to permit the use of warning or courtesy lights. Routinely examine your member's driving record or MVR. This will tell you if certain members may have driving issues. Next, verify your members have valid driver's licenses and personal auto insurance. This will help protect your agency from being dragged into a lawsuit if an unlicensed or uninsured member is involved in a crash while on a call.
We have a higher duty to the public to make sure that we only allow people to have the privilege, and it is a privilege, to have a courtesy light. Only those people who have a good driving record should be issued one of those lights, and that should be regularly monitored by chief officers.
There's no doubt that fire apparatus and ambulances are becoming safer for occupants. There are many technologies in today's vehicles that help prevent crashes and limit injury to occupants in the event of a crash. Most organizations even have very stringent maintenance procedures for those apparatus. But how about your members' personal vehicles used to respond to emergencies? Who's checking those? Conduct routine safety checks on your members' POVs to establish whether the vehicle is in safe operating order. This is important for two reasons. One, not all states require state vehicle inspection. And two, as the chief of the department, you are the one responsible for issuing permits for members to install and use warning devices. It could come back on you and the department if there's an accident and the vehicle wasn't in compliance. To help you know what to look for, VFIS has developed a safety checklist for you to use. This form is not a mechanical inspection form. You won't be looking under the hood or undercarriage. But it's not enough to have a safe vehicle. You need to know how to drive it on your way to a call. If you're going to use your POV for emergency situations, you need to know and follow certain SOPs. Your agency should have these and enforce them. If they don't, use this list developed by VFIS and encourage your chief to draft one for your station.
Well, every department should set up very strict rules and policies on who gets a courtesy light. And in addition to just getting your name on the list, each department should do a very thorough job of checking people out. It's funny because some chiefs will say to me, hey, we're better off not having a policy because then we can't be held accountable for any problems. Well, that's wrong, plain and simple. It's educational information that gives you the parameters as to how you should be operating and the rules that you should follow. Then you need to follow them.
Volunteers and POVs must obey their state motor vehicle code with respect to warning light and siren privileges. All warning lights should be approved by the chief of the department with a written permit. The permit should include the rules of the road that apply. Procedures for at-the-scene parking and staging should be included in SOPs. Volunteers must have personal auto liability insurance with appropriate liability limits that protect the volunteer and the organization. All members operating vehicles, including POVs, must maintain and provide a copy of their most recent driver's license. Every member should have a copy of your department's SOPs and sign off that they've read them and understand them. Just as important, every department should have written enforcement and discipline guidelines for any member who violates procedures. Finally, as an officer or administrator, you can reduce exposure from members getting into POV-related accidents by providing defensive driver training techniques. Here again, VFIS has produced a number of safe driving programs for emergency services that you can use. In your own defensive driving instruction course, you'll want to emphasize several basic concepts. Rate of closure. This concept is especially important when you're running warning lights. Warning lights often frighten other drivers or cause them to make unexpected moves that could lead to an accident. Proper rate of closure will allow others to see you and react safely. Following distance. Actual following distance is based on the speed and characteristics of your vehicle, the road, and weather conditions. Always wear a seat belt. Not only will a properly worn belt keep you in your seat in the case of a crash, but it will also keep you in position to help alleviate the crash in the first place. The difference between the belted person's stopping distance and the unbelted person's stopping distance is significant. It's often the difference between life and death. Drive at a safe speed. According to the National Safety Council, exceeding the posted speed limit is one of the most common errors in fatal crashes. Speeding is also a major factor in POV-related fatalities. When passing another vehicle that has given you the courtesy and yielded the right-of-way, use caution as you pass to verify their intent and that they are in fact acknowledging your request. Nighttime is a more dangerous time to be on the road. Traffic fatality rates are 3 to 4 times higher at night than during the day, so be extra cautious and follow posted speeds. During inclement weather, reduce your speed and increase the space between yourself and other vehicles. Avoid making any sudden moves and watch for ice patches, wet leaves, flooded roadways and bridges, which freeze before road surfaces. SUVs are the biggest culprits of rollovers. Just remember, when driving an SUV, it's tough to stop quickly at high speeds. And with their higher center of gravity, they're more likely than cars to roll over if you turn too fast. We've thrown a lot of material at you in this short presentation, so let's review the big stuff. Find out from your state motor vehicle code whether or not your POV is considered an authorized emergency vehicle. If it's not, you have to obey your state's traffic laws when you're on a call. POV accidents can cost you big time in lost work time, in fines, in possible defense costs, in the loss of your car and your driver's license. It can cost your department heavily too. Avoid having members use their POVs by establishing duty crews or setting up staging areas for crews to meet en route to an incident. If you're a chief or administrator of your organization and you issue permits for warning devices for POVs, make sure all POV driving members have a safe driving record, a driver's license, and liability insurance. And make sure they drive a safe, fully operational vehicle. Be sure to have them read and understand your organization's SOPs for operating their own vehicles. And possibly the most important thing to remember, drive defensively.
Well, I think in responding in your personal vehicle, you have a really sacred responsibility to be careful about what you're doing and to drive defensively and to drive safely, because we are the protectors of the community and we're out there trying to help people, but we can't help people unless we get there safely, and we can't help people when we injure others in the process.
A lot of times people get caught up, particularly in emergency response, you get caught up in the moment. You get caught up in what I'm going to do. And it's in the going from here to there that sometimes we forget about that. Get there. Be part of the team. Don't be part of the problem, and also avoid some penalties and problems yourself. Be the best responder that you can and be a professional at it.
Look, we like being in emergency services. We like helping people. We like rushing in to save the day. We like being counted on when there's an emergency situation. But there's nothing heroic in creating an emergency on the way to one. If you have to drive your POV to an emergency situation, follow the motor vehicle laws and get to and from the incident safely so that you have a chance to make a difference. Your family, your department, and VFIS thank you.